Good morning. Our 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. From the Book of Wisdom. God did not make death, nor does he rejoice in the destruction of the living. He fashioned all things, that they might have being, and the creatures of the world are wholesome. And there is not a destructive drug among them, nor any domain of the netherworld on earth, for justice is undying. For God formed man to be imperishable, the image of his own nature he made him. But by the envy of the devil, death entered the world, and they who belong to his company experience it. The word of the Lord. Our second reading from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, as you excel in every respect, in faith, discourse, knowledge, all earnestness, and in the love we have for you, may you excel in this gracious act also. For you know the gracious act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, for your sake he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. Not that others should have relief, while you are burdened, but that is a matter of equality. Your abundance at the present time should supply their needs, so that their abundance may also supply your needs, that there may be equality. As it is written, whoever had much did not have more, and whoever had little did not have less. The word of the Lord. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed again to the boat, in the boat on the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed upon him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors, and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to Jesus, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace, and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid. Just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside, except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. And he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother, and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that she should be given something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord. Mark's Gospel is the shortest of all four Gospels. Yet, this passage on the 13th week in Ordinary Time gives us quite a bit to talk about. The synagogue official Jairus, who came to Jesus and knelt before him and begged that he take care of his daughter, who was dying. When he offered to go to Jairus' home, Jesus broke all the rules of his faith, becoming ritually impure by entering a Gentile's home. Jesus was going to the house when a woman who had suffered from hemorrhages for 12 years, came up and touched his cloak. Mark is giving his little zing to the medical profession of his day. She had spent all her money. Not only did the doctors not help her, but she grew worse. That's a dart at the medical profession. But when he gets into the home, he goes up and grabs the young girl's hand, who had already been pronounced dead, and calls her up. And she stands up. What Jesus did, and the saying in this gospel has stuck with me. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. That synagogue official was fearful that his daughter would die. That woman who was hemorrhaging was fearful she would never feel better again. We live so often with fear, people. In this city, there's a fear of the violence going on. There's a fear of going out and being mugged or beaten or shot. There's a fear of dying. I offer that to you. Those words of Jesus. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. A synagogue official, fearful as he was, approached Jesus for help. That woman, fearful as she was, touched his cloak. And the gospel says there were people pressing in on him, so there were so many touching his cloak. That woman was the only one who was cured because of her faith, Jesus said. To each one, I offer to you that fear is part of our lives. This pandemic, the last 15 months, has caused tremendous fear. Am I going to get this pandemic and die? Am I going to be like those I know who died? The 600,000 just in this country who have died from this pandemic. We're called to have faith. Jesus was fearful that night before he died on the cross in the Garden of Gethsemane. One of the Gospels says he sweat blood. But he put that fear aside and faced the cross anyway, and was resurrected 3 days later. I leave you with a saying that I remember from many years ago, even though I don't know who said it. It goes like this: the presence of fear does not mean you have no faith. Fear visits everyone, but let fear be a visitor and not a resident. God bless. Have a good week.